One, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, roll, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
I wanna fly. Can you take me far away? Give me a star to reach for. Tell me what it takes, and I'll go so high. I'll go so high.
One of America's finest, a teacher.
It's not often that a teacher is at a loss for words. I know my students wouldn't think so. I've made 9 wonderful friends over the last 2 weeks. And when that shuttle goes, they might be one body. But there's going to be 10 souls that I'm taking with me. Thank you.
Office at the Laboratory for Astrophysics and Space Research at the University of Chicago, and I heard a commotion in the hallway, and I walked out and I saw one of the senior scientists in the lab with his jaw completely dropped on the floor, like, what happened? And we then went and found a television set, and they were starting to, talk about the accident and replay what had happened. We were shocked because up to then the shuttle had been very reliable. Obviously spaceflight is quite dangerous, but we've been pretty lucky. There were 25. That was the 25th flight of the shuttle, I believe, and no one really expected a dramatic failure like that to occur. And obviously, everyone was very concerned for the people who were involved, and also for what it was going to do to the space program.
It's a nightmare that I've had ever since I've covered the space program, and usually the night before I had the same nightmare that what I saw today, and I thought it was a dream. I was speechless for a few minutes. I knew that explosion shouldn't have happened when it did, and I was holding my breath, and I crossed my fingers as I always do right before the launch. And when I saw the fireball in the sky, I knew no one could have survived that. It's gotta be the toughest thing I've ever done in my life.
The events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss.
It was a pretty long period where they had to figure out what happened. That was difficult because you have to reconstruct the evidence based on something that has blown up. So first of all, you have to recover the pieces. They're designed for safety reasons to fall into the ocean, and so it's important to recover those pieces and to very slowly reconstruct what happened. And so they set up this commission that had a number of very eminent people on it. I forget who headed it, but Richard Feynman, who's a very famous physicist, was on the commission, and he would do sort of off-the-wall things. And what turned out to be the problem was that you have the boosters, and they're made of cylinders that you stack up, and between each pair of cylinders, there's something to keep things sealed and tightly together. It's an O-ring. It's just basically a material. And what they discovered is that those O-rings, when they were cold, were too stiff and didn't work. And Feynman did this very famous thing where he took one of these O-rings and he was sitting in a congressional hearing and he just dipped it in his ice water and pulled it out and said, hey, this stuff's really hard when it's cold. And, very basic, going back to, how you would approach the problem if you're just a regular person or trying to figure out what's going on. So this really did slow down the program while they figured it out. And then, of course, they had to figure out, well, what do you do differently so this doesn't happen again? So they became much stricter on the criteria under which they would launch the shuttle. NASA's a very schedule-driven agency. You can get into trouble for being late. I've been on experiments where, if you're late, your experiment could be canceled. And in some cases, that means someone's out of a job. And so people want to be successful, and sometimes there's some denial. What actually happens is at NASA, it's the person who's managing the project job to cancel their own project if it's not going to be successful. And so they're really in that position where they have the authority to do that. But when I think when you get into a situation like you would on any project where you really want it to be successful, you tend to overlook the things that would make it unsuccessful sometimes, and then create your own failure. Although you kind of intellectually know it's a dangerous activity, it was a big reminder that people who do that take their lives in their hands every time they go to work and hop into one of these things.
We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue.